participants within it and look at how they now move forward. You know, they need to make a decision immediately, really, as regards Ben Emerson's position, because if realistically they are going to replace such senior counsel who've been involved in this inquiry, that can only cause more delay to this inquiry, which, as we know, was set up in 2014, and although has done a lot of good work so far, is yet to receive live evidence.
Right. Karma Melli, thank you again for joining us.
Not at all.
The streets of Aleppo, the Syrian city under attack, is rife with rubble. The efforts of the volunteers to search for any survivors under collapsed buildings often come to nothing. But a little girl, thought to be about 5 years old, was pulled alive after being trapped for several hours following an attack on her home. She's thought to be the only survivor. Our correspondent Emma Murphy on her rescue.
With care, they work through what was until yesterday home to 3 families. Now it's a dusty grave for many of those who'd hoped that a home would offer protection. Yet incredibly, one of the children did survive, her shrill shout heard amidst the drilling. It's a rare moment of hope for the White Helmet rescue teams. They scrabble for her, aware they've just hauled the bodies of those she lives with from elsewhere in the rubble. And then they see her, a small pink arm in the debris. Her name is Ghazal. She is 5 years old. We believe that this is her father. His eyes betray his fear. No one knows how badly the little girl is injured or if she'll survive the rescue. But then, after 4 hours, the joy of success. Badly dazed, barely conscious, but seeking a hand of comfort, she is taken from the building which entombed her. Thank God we managed to take her out, this rescue worker says. When we were pulling her out, she was screaming, oh God, my Father, hold my hand. And I felt it was like my own daughter. I was scared that a rock would fall down on her and kill her. She was screaming for her father as she felt that her family members were all killed and only he had survived. When we took her out, it was like something really great. We saved a soul from under the rubble, and this is something that we feel really proud of. Such scenes bring rare moments of hope in Aleppo, a city where hope fades by the day. Emma Murphy, ITV News.
Here, Britain will be on a mission to promote free trade around the world and cut fresh deals with partners when we leave the European Union. In his first major speech as the man in charge of negotiations, Dr. Liam Fox described Brexit as a golden opportunity and said those that think the vote was a sign of us looking inwards were 100% wrong. Our political correspondent Libby Vina joins us live now from Westminster. So, Libby, big on ambition but still thin on detail.
Well, Alistair, I think big on wishful thinking might be a more accurate summary of this speech. It sounded still very much like a campaign speech for Vote Leave rather than a speech by a government minister actually in charge of deciding how we leave the European Union. And detail, as you suggest, was very thin on the ground. Essentially, Liam Fox said that he believed free trade was a very good idea, protectionism a very bad idea, and he believed that outside the European Union we could get as good a deal as we'd had inside.
It's in everybody's interest that as we move forward, we have at least as free a trading environment as we have today. Anything else may not harm the politicians and the institutions, but it will harm the people of Europe. And it's the people of Europe who should be at the forefront of our thoughts during that period.
And pressure this weekend on his boss, the Prime Minister, to make it clearer where she stands on Europe.
Yes, well, Downing Street today were still saying that Theresa May didn't want to give a running commentary on the negotiations or her preparation for the negotiations, but I don't think she's going to be able to hold that line for very much longer. The former Education Secretary Nicky Morgan today suggested that the government lacked a plan and the danger was that others would then set the terms of the debate.
Libby, thank you. The allegations of corruption in English football today filtered down to the lower leagues and the lesser names, having claimed the scalp of the England manager. In the last few minutes, the assistant manager of a championship side has been sacked by his club over claims of wrongdoing. Another is under investigation. With the claims engulfing the sport, today one Premier League manager conceded it had been a difficult week, while the manager of Wales said anyone caught taking bribes should be permanently removed. Nick Wallace with the latest.
Well, listen, we've got to give him some ready to get him started.
This is Tommy Wright, assistant manager at Championship side Barnsley. He's apparently been given a cash payment by journalists posing as representatives of a Far Eastern sports firm, on the understanding he'd recommend his employers sign players they control.
Thanks for helping.
Tommy Wright denies doing anything wrong, but has now been sacked by his club. His boss just wanted to talk football.
My focus this morning, though, is the players and the team, and that's it. And obviously that's why I've come here to speak today.
But one leading figure in the game had no sympathy for those who cheat.
What we're talking about is people stealing money, effectively. That's what they do. Now, whether you're earning 50 grand a year or 50 grand a week, you're stealing money. So I don't know anybody that gets caught doing that. You need to be removed from the game permanently. That's it. Good night.
The problems don't end there. In another attempted sting, the QPR manager Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank appears to be negotiating a large fee to fly to the Far East for a meeting. He's told the firm want to recommend him players to sign at QPR. He seems open to the possibility. Today, the QPR manager was taking training as normal after issuing a statement in which he denies any impropriety. But the club have said there will be a full internal investigation. And a manager many believe should get the England job full-time believes off and on the pitch the game is in a bad place.
It's been a difficult week for English football. You know, I would think the team needed consistency. The FA had chosen Sam as their man to lead the team forward, and I think it was the right appointment. So I think I'm really saddened for English football because the team will suffer from this point.
More revelations from The Telegraph are expected over the next few days. Nick Wallace, ITV News.
And still to come this lunchtime.
You're not supposed to grab members.
We're not, but I had to ask.
Kate William fan who wanted to get extra close to the Royals. But first, people who regularly take common painkillers could be at increased risk of suffering heart failure after a major study found a significant link. The research published in the British Medical Journal studied 10 million people with an average age of 77. Now, those who took anti-inflammatory drugs such as ibuprofen, naproxen and diclofenac were almost 20% more likely to be taken to hospital with heart failure than those who didn't. Now, to discuss this, let's talk to Neil Patel from the Royal Pharmaceutical Society and GP Dr. Muna Mansouri. Muna, let me start with you. That age group, first of all, it's absolutely clear we do not want anyone at home panicking. Talk me through the age group.
Well, really, what we're seeing is that there seems to be a higher risk in people who are older, who may already have a vulnerability or susceptibility to heart conditions, or already have an underlying heart condition or other chronic diseases that can put them more at risk of problems later on. So these are the people who are most at risk. There is risk in younger age groups as well. So we mustn't forget, people who are long-term on this medication need to be aware and to have a discussion about the benefits versus the risks.
And we're talking about pain killing here. We're also talking about things like arthritis, anything that involves shrinking stuff down. From the Royal College's point of view, are there alternatives that you know are safer?
Well, ibuprofen is one of the safest anti-inflammatory medicines we have.
As long as you're under 65.
That's right. So younger people who haven't got those long-term conditions can take this medicine safely as long as they use the lowest possible dose for the shortest possible time. I think it's important that people who use it occasionally for sports injuries or headaches, they're not the group we're looking at today. It's those older people who've got other comorbidities, other long-term conditions that really should be reviewed by their GP and have medication reviews by their pharmacist.
You were telling one of our researchers, one of our producers, that actually the finding didn't come as any surprise to you or the collective of GPs. So why is this making the headlines today?
I think because it's such a large study and it's looked at so many people.
It confirms everything you'd feared.
It adds great weight to what we already knew. We've already changed our prescribing practices for some number of years now. So we've been taking people off these medications for a long time, and we've been advising our patients when we review them on a regular basis that they should consider coming off or using less or using lower doses depending on what they're on the medication for.
That point about frequency of use, and indeed people using it when actually, you know, between you, me and the gatepost, they don't really need it, but they've got into the habit. Does that require a fresh protocol between people who are prescribing, pharmacists, and GPs who are writing out the notes that pharmacists get?
That's right. I mean, we're working closer together as two professions, making sure that when we spot people who are perhaps taking medication for a long period of time, either buying it over the counter or on prescription, perhaps they're developing worrying signs, indigestion, maybe their weight's gained, they get swelling on the ankles or they're short of breath, then we should refer those patients straight to the GP for a proper review to make sure these medicines aren't causing more trouble than they're actually benefiting.
Sure. Final thought from you, and it's sort of going back to my caveat earlier on. Yes. We've reported many times on the pressures that GPs feel themselves to be under at the moment. But anyone who is over 65 listening to that conversation who are worrying, what should they do?
I think if you're on long-term medication of this sort, these non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, you can have a discussion with your GP about what you're using it for and whether you need to continue on that. In some cases, it's totally appropriate to continue. Yep. It depends on the risks versus the benefit for each individual patient.
Enlightening and constructive. Thank you both very much indeed. And a full list of the painkillers which could lead to increased risk, but do bear in mind what Muna just said, of heart failure can be found on our website. It's at itv.com/news. Police are appealing for witnesses after a teenage girl was snatched from the street and sexually assaulted in Oxford. The schoolgirl was grabbed by two white men in a silver car just before 8:30 yesterday morning. She was found knocking on doors, seeking help several hours after she was taken. The police have warned children walking to school in the area to stay in groups. Britain's most senior police officer is retiring 7 months before his contract was due to end. Bernard Hogan-Howe, who has been the London Metropolitan Police Commissioner for 5 years, denied that his decision to leave was due to a difficult relationship with the new London Mayor Sadiq Khan. Olivia Kinsley reports.
If Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe's career is long and distinguished, his reign at the top is ending short. 7 months before the end of his contract, he says it's time for change.
New mayor's arrived and they will want to make their plans over the next 4 years. New Home Secretary, as it happens. And I won't be here for that 4 or 5 year period. We know that for certain.
5 years ago, when he was appointed, familiar faces, now in different roles. Boris Johnson has been replaced as London Mayor by Sadiq Khan, and there are reports that tensions with the Commissioner may partly have caused this early exit. Sadiq Khan says that's not the case.
We've got a really good working relationship. We've worked really well together. He's had my confidence, but he's done the job for 5 years. What he's done, which I'm grateful for, is given the Home Secretary and me sufficient notice so we can have a good successor in place when he retires. Bernard's not checked out.
In charge of counter-terrorism across the country, the Commissioner's overseen a huge recruitment of armed officers. In rarely more challenging circumstances, his record will have been largely to have kept us safe. But he announces his retirement ahead of a report into Scotland Yard's handling of investigations involving historical abuse claims. That leaves time and opportunity for his legacy still to change. Olivia Kinsley, ITV News.
And finally, as the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge braced Arctic temperatures in northern Canada, they were embraced by a woman with special memories. She was a fan of William's mother Diana, whose ring Catherine wears. Less romantic, but certainly exciting, a ride on a steam train the Queen and Duke of Edinburgh travelled on nearly 60 years ago. Our Royal editor Tim Ewert's been with the Duke and Duchess on their tour.
Morse code announced the Queen's presence in the Yukon in 1959. Now in the same telegraph office, William and Kate's arrival was also recorded in Morse for translation into a tweet. Canada is comfortable territory for any royal tour, and the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge have been enthusiastically received. The town of Whitehorse put on its brightest smile.
William and Kate always pull a crowd here, and it's important that they carry on winning hearts and minds. Most Canadians remain loyal monarchists, but not everyone is wedded to the idea of maintaining links with the British Crown.
William! One recent opinion poll showed that nearly 40% of Canadians want to abolish the monarchy after the Queen's death. William and Kate boarded the same steam train used by the Queen all those years ago. It did not leave the station. Royal visits like these cover a lot of ground as fast as possible. Next stop, a meeting with young mountain bikers. It seemed for a moment that a front-page picture was in the offing, but Kate put discretion before valour. Gwen Whalley, however, was not disappointed. A passionate admirer of Diana, Princess of Wales, this moment was the stuff of her dreams. And there was more to come.
I can't explain how exciting it is right now.
Well, you're not supposed to grab members of the royal family.
We're not, but I had to ask because this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, right?
Did you say, is it okay if I hug you, or did you just go and do
I
it?
just said, can I have a hug? And he says, yes, you sure can.
The next royal engagement here will feature William and Kate's children. George and Charlotte are small, but when it comes to championing the British monarchy, they pack a big punch. Tim Hewitt, ITV News, Canada.
And that might just sneak into the ITV Evening News at 6:30. The news where you are follows the national weather, but for now, from all of us here, bye-bye.